وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه وبركاته عليه. أما بعد، فإن خير الكلام كلام الله، وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue in this great treatise entitled Fataawa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra by the great Imam Ibn Abbas Taqi-ud-Din Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi rahimahullah, the one who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. The time now is currently 7:19 p.m. Wednesday, January the 31st, 2024, which agrees with the Tariq al-Islami al-Hijri, which is technically the 20th of this night of Rajab, which is technically Laylatul Khamis, Thursday evening, according to Islamic calendar, of course, which agrees with the year Aam 1445, the year 1445 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. We spoke about the affair pertaining to the statement of some of the so-called heads of Tasawwuf, which you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah cited his statement. And like we said, you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam utilized these statements not to use them as an evidence for us, but rather to use them as an evidence of those who were in opposition. You'll find that he had taken the statements of those who were the heads at that particular time of misguidance and saying that these are what your own heads are saying, which agrees with what I'm calling you to, so why aren't you following it? Because the affair of what they were upon, the matters pertaining to this particular statement by Muhammad ibn Khafif, you'll find that he's saying exactly what is the principles and the foundations of the Muslims' prosperity and success, which is to follow the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Message of Allah, and the methodology of the companions who are called the Salaf, the methodology and the belief of the companions who are called the Salaf. You'll find that Muhammad ibn Khafif, like we said last class, was saying these same principles. And you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam is saying, this is what your own Shaykh is saying, so why aren't you following it? And all I'm calling you to is something that has already been established, but the problem is the Muslims left it off. And the only thing that Shaykh al-Islam was calling was something that, like we said, revival of the religion doesn't mean bringing something new or newly introducing something into the religion. Rather, he's calling the Muslims to come back to what they left off and what they abandoned, which is in it success and prosperity in this world and in the hereafter. It relies upon them holding on to what the Messenger of Allah was upon, especially in the most vital of all matters and the most important of them, which is in creed and methodology, because that is the foundation in which all the religion is based upon. And anything that is established upon something weak, it will fall. Doesn't matter whether it's from a house, a building, a car. If it's not built upon strong foundations, it collapses. You'll find you will fail. If you're not fundamentally sound, you will what? You'll find your demise, and you'll find that ultimately you will what? Come up in a very humiliating way, in a humiliating state. So the Muslims, like we said, everyone, in order for them to return back, or for their power to be restored, they have to revert back to these matters that gave them prosperity in the first place, which is the methodology of all the prophets and messengers, and what we're speaking about in this particular topic. Like I said, everyone, as it says in the statement of Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Khafif, like we said, he was someone who was upon tasawwuf. Keep that in mind. Shaykh al-Islam, like we said, utilized his statement against their own followers to say, he's saying exactly what I'm saying. So if you're going to now criticize me, then that means you have to criticize your own Shaykh. And if you want to now humiliate me or say something about me, then this is what he is saying. So why aren't you following it? So I keep mentioning that so no one can say that it's permissible to use the people of misguidance or the statements of the Mukhalifin, the people who are in opposition, as proofs for us. No. Rather, from the aspect of criticizing, or in order to establish the proof, is to use the statement of your own leaders against you, to say this is what he's saying. He is even saying this. And this is something that he is saying here clearly in his books. And as a result of it, you're not following it. So the thing is that you'll find, like we said, everyone, that is the matter that we wanted to stand out and make everyone realize before we continue. So keep in mind what we said last class, the statement of, again, everyone, Muhammad ibn Khafif, who's from the Shuyukh al-Tasawwuf, like I said. Keep in mind, like he said in his book called I'tiqad al-Tawheed bi-Ithbat al-Asma' wa-Sifat. The belief of monotheism, that was the name of his book, I'tiqad al-Tawheed, the creed of monotheism, by affirming the names and attributes of Allah. So he believed this. He was a person upon tasawwuf, and despite of that, he affirmed what? Saying that one, in order to purify their fundamentals in regards to the monotheism of Allah, he has to affirm what? The names and attributes of Allah. So even this matter, he's what? Stating. He's saying here. You'll find, as we said last class, listen to the principles that he lays down. He said that the Sahaba, who are from who? From the Muhajirin and the Ansar. This is what we mentioned last class. From those who migrated to Mecca and to Medina, and those who received those who migrated, who are called the Ansar. Meaning the people of Medina, and they received them and they welcomed them, who are called the Ansar, which was in Medina. He said that you'll find that their statement was unified in the Tawheed of Allah, and the monotheism of Allah, in regards to the worship and the abandonment of polytheism and all of its types. The abandonment of polytheism and all of its types. And they also believed in the names and attributes of Allah and the divine decree. And listen to what, as we said last class, qawlan wahida. It was one statement, meaning they were unified. They didn't differ in these matters. So you'll find that there are Muslims out there that would say they did differ in these matters, which is extremely dangerous. An extremely dangerous statement, which allows everyone to believe what they want to believe in the name of so-called unity, which is a unity that angers Allah. There's two types of unification, as we talked about on numerous occasions. You have the legislated unity and you have the innovated unity. The legislated unity is uniting upon the creed of what the Messenger of Allah is upon. That we all unite upon that creed in which the Messenger of Allah and his companions were upon, and those who follow them with perfection. That is a creed, that is a legislated unification that will please Allah. And Allah will bless it. The Muslims, majority of them these days, they call to unification of just mere numbers. That's it. Without purifying what gives them quality in the first place, which is unifying them upon the creed of what the Messenger of Allah was upon and his companions, and making that their primary foundation and fundamental principle that they cling to. And anyone that goes against that, then we separate ourselves from them, even if you claim you're Muslim. Even if you say La ilaha illallah. Because now there's people out there that say La ilaha illallah, but they believe Allah is everywhere. There's Muslims out there that say La ilaha illallah and they curse the companions of the Messenger of Allah. There are Muslims out there that say La ilaha illallah and they don't believe in the names and attributes of Allah. This type of unification, everyone, is an innovated unification that angers Allah. Why? Because it's not unifying upon what's correct. And what comes as a result of it, Allah removes the blessing from it, and you unify based upon numbers, and Allah might just give you some worldly things. You'll find that people who Allah loves and who Allah hates and gives them dunya. And we know this. This is from the hadith and the message of Allah sallallahu إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُعْطِي الدُّنْيَا لِمَنْ يُحِبُّ وَمَنْ لَا يُحِبُّ وَمَنْ أَعْطَاهُ اللَّهُ الدِّينَ فَقَدْ أَحَبَّهُ. We know the narrations where the message of Allah sallallahu said that Allah gives the worldly affairs or worldly benefits of this world to who He loves and who He does not love. But He only gives proper guidance and proper religion to who He loves. So the affairs of pertaining to worldly matters and its rectification, Allah could give that to the most wicked of person, the most wicked of people, and the most evil of people, and most mischievous from amongst them. And despite of that, that is not the affair we look at. The affair what we look at is the belief system and how intact it is, and how the affair is upon what the message of Allah was upon. That is the matter, like we said, of what we judge affairs based upon, and we unite upon that, and we disunite upon that. And if we don't do that, that will anger Allah, because true unity is unifying of what Allah loves and what Allah hates. Those are the affairs that will bring blessing, and that is the affair that Allah will bless. What's the point of doing something if Allah doesn't bless it, everyone? Does it make any sense? Just for a mere facade? We came to the religion to be phony people? Just to be phony? See, look at the numbers. At the end of the day, people hate each other, and they're divided still. But just for the camera, the lights, camera, the action, let's take pictures and act like we're all united, even though our hearts are cursing each other. Why? Because we're not united in the core essential affair that gives us unity, which is unifying the hearts upon what's correct. The heart needs to be united first, and then that affair will be implemented genuinely, outwardly, in everyone's actions and everyone's body, where they truly show genuine love amongst each other, instead of it being just a facade, of being phony, and it's just for the lights and camera and action, just for that particular moment. But once everyone goes away, everybody goes to their normal routine. Oh yeah, I don't like him at the end of the day. Yeah, I can't stand him. I was just there just for people to take pictures for the video. We smile, ha ha ha. But I can't stand him at the end of the day. You understand, everyone? Why? Because they didn't unite themselves with what purifies the hearts, which is the creed, being unified in that affair. Right, so let's keep going. So he said, Muhammad bin Khafif, what Shaykh al-Islam cited in his book, he says, we already mentioned this, I'll mention the last part. It says, إِذْ لَمْ يَخْتَلِفُوا بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ فِي أَحْكَامِ التَّوْحِيدِ. That none of the companions, that they differed by the praise of Allah and the ahkam, the affairs and the rulings of monotheism and the fundamentals of the religion and pertaining to the names and attributes of Allah, just as they differed in certain affairs in the branches, meaning the affairs of fiqh, of what the text was not establishing, or what they did not have of the text that reached them at that time from the sunnah. We talked about the affairs of fiqh, those matters, there was certain what? Ikhtilaf in those matters of those who did not have knowledge of certain sunnah of the message of Allah. But we know, even the affairs of fiqh, when a certain text that was authenticated upon the message of Allah reached them, they left off that fatwa or that statement, and they embraced fully the statement of the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even in the affairs of fiqh. But the point of the matter is that the most vital of affairs, the Sahaba did not differ in. From those matters, as we said, was in the names and the attributes of Allah. If you see anyone saying that the Sahaba differed in the fundamentals, know for sure that is a liar, that's a shaitan, and you need to get yourself far away from. He does not know what he's talking about, or she knows what she's speaking about, and she needs to educate themselves, and to the point where ignorance is to this extent, they don't even be given dawah at all to say this type of ignorant statement, which can necessitate all types of evils and wickedness and anger from Allah descended upon the creation as a result of it. The statement is evil, and it allows the doors of everyone who hates what Allah hates, they hate what Allah loves, to come now and do what they want in the name of Islam. That is the matter, as we said, everyone, that we do not want. So it keeps going, as he says in the statement. He said they differed in the affairs of furu', in the branches of certain matters of fiqh, which the text did not reach them, or they did not have knowledge of. وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْهُمْ فِي ذَلِكَ اِخْتِلَافٍ لَنُقِنَا إِلَيْنَا. If the matter was something of differing amongst the foundation or the creed, it would have been what? Conveyed to us. because those are the most important of all matters. And despite of that, it was not conveyed. To let you know what, everyone, they were all what? United in the foundations of the religion. In regards to what's polytheism, in regards to those affairs as pertaining to the names and attributes of Allah and the rububiyyah of Allah, and all those matters as ones to avoid from the, as we said, in the matters of worship, all those matters have been what? Unified. And one of the matters and examples I gave from last class, everyone, every Muslim, even from the deviant sects, what's so strange is they all know this. In the affairs of Salah, every Muslim knows that if it was any Muslim, as soon as you came in the Masjid and the people were praying in congregation, let's just say Fajr, you walked in the Masjid and you seen someone leading the prayer and they made Fajr 3 rakat. They made Salat al-Fajr 3 rakat. How would you now react? Every Muslim would be, this man is clear. First, okay, let's give you an excuse. Maybe he forgot. But the point of the matter is that the fact that you say maybe he forgot is to let you know, instinctively, you know he did something wrong. What if that person came to you and said after the Salat, no, I'll pray 3 because I felt like it. Because I wanted to do something better. I wanted to do something more. That's in affairs of prayer. Every Muslim would stand up and say what, everyone? Now let's see, for example, he said to you, Ya akhi, this ikhtilaf for Fajr. I could pray 3. The ulama differed. How would you react? You say, akhi, now everyone reverts back to the usul here. We have kitab, sunnah, we have to follow it. Even the deviant sects would now want to go back to the proper way and the proper principles to refute falsehood in that particular instance. Right or wrong? Now let's revert back to the usul in prayer. Ya akhi, you can't do more what the Messenger of Allah did. In that particular era, they follow the principles. They follow the rules. Right? Tayyib. There's, brothers and sisters, there's affairs that's more important than that. Than the salah, in which you stick to the fundamentals to let you know that ikhtilaf is not acceptable in this area. There's no Muslim out there that prays Fajr 3 rakat. There's no Muslim out there that's going to pray Dhuhr 6 rakat because I felt more energetic today to add more. There's no Muslim that's going to do that. Every Muslim all around the world will come and say and reprimand you and criticize you. Yeah, what are you doing? That's a no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, such and such. These affairs are what? Fundamentals, principles, and foundations of the religion. Brothers and sisters, the affairs that's more important than the prayer. That's your belief. If you know that there's no ikhtilafi in salah, and how many raka'at, and how many is to be prayed, what about more of the affairs that pertain to your belief? You think it's ikhtilaf in that? And that's more important than the prayer. That is the reason why, to put in perspective, that the affair of what unites us in the affairs of creed has been settled upon in the what? Greatest of this ummah, who's the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. And that's in prayer. And like we said, what's more important than that is what, everyone? Is creed, your belief. Because the affair of creed and belief is what validates your Islam in the first place. Then the prayer comes after that. You have to testify to Shahada La ilaha illallah, firmly believing in that correctly. Then what validates that, what comes after that is the prayer. But if that first validation wasn't correct, then the prayer wouldn't be valid in the first place. That is the reason why, as we said, everyone, those matters have not been what? Differed in. Is it clear? Tayyib, so let's keep going. So it says, the Muhammad bin Khafifi goes on to say, he said, if they would have differed, then that affair would have been conveyed to us, meaning from amongst the companions. But it wasn't. To let you know that they were all what, everyone? Unified. They stayed away from polytheism. They stayed away from those affairs. All those matters of creed, the belief of the divine decree, the affair of the belief of the unseen, of the angels, the shayateen, or the affairs of the devils, which is affairs of the unseen, of course. All those matters pertaining to creed, the belief in the books, and the previous books that Allah revealed, the prophets that came before, they were all united in that. Was not one from amongst the companions that differed in that regard. And if that affair, which is the most vital, most important of all of them, had happened amongst them, it would have been conveyed to us. فاستقر صحة ذلك عن خاصتهم وعامتهم حتى أدوا إلى التابعين لهم بإحسان. We talked about the validity of that amongst the scholars from amongst them and the common folk from amongst them until they conveyed it to those who came after them, who are called the tabi'een, who followed them with benevolence or with perfection. طيب. So it says فاستقر صحة ذلك عند العلماء المعروفين حتى نقلوا ذلك قرنا بعد قرن. He said, of course, those known scholars from amongst them, that affair or the validity of that affair was settled until it was conveyed one century after another century. And the ikhtilaf, of course, so-called as they claim in the origin with them, they used to believe that differing in these type of matters was considered a type of disbelief. It was kufr, it was a type of disbelief. Walillahi al-minna. This is a Sufi saying this. Keep this in mind. This is a Sufi saying this. So Shaykh al-Islam saying, see, this is your leader. He's saying exactly what I'm saying. Am I saying something new? Am I saying something wrong? This is your head of your own people saying this from your heads. So why aren't you what? Following it. Because like we said, everyone, people thought Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah was bringing something what? New. And in actuality, wasn't calling to anything other than what was the pure religion of Islam and what was considered in the most profound, clearest manner in which Allah will bless and put barakah in the ummah if they was to follow it and adhere to it and cling to it. Right, so let's keep going. إنه لما احدثوا في أحكام التوحيد. Now listen to this. He said, ثم إني قائل وبالله أقول إنه لما أحدثوا في أحكام التوحيد وذكر الأسماء والصفات على خلاف منهج المتقدمين من الصحابة والتابعين فخاض في ذلك من لم يعرفوا بعلم الآثار ولم يعقلوا قولهم بذكر الأخبار وصار معولهم على أحكام هواجس النفوس المستخرجة من سوء الطوية وما وافق على مخالفة السنة والتعلق منهم بآيات لم يسعدهم فيها ما وافق النفوس فتأولوا على أهوائهم وصححوا بذلك مذاهبهم احتجت إلى الكشف عن صفة المتقدمين. Like, keep this in mind. Like I said, this is a Sufi saying this. He said, for verily I make a statement, and with Allah I say, when they newly introduced in the rulings of monotheism and the mentioning of the names and attributes of Allah in contrast, meaning going against the methodology of those who came first from the companions and the tabi'een, and they now indulge in those affairs, meaning starting to mention it in the incorrect way. People who are not known for following the narrations or knowledge of the narrations, and they did not properly understand their statements by mentioning those narrations in which they relied upon, which was the ahkam or the rulings of what those inward selves called them to, what they inward whispers and the thoughts and the so-called rationalities of what their minds came up, which was now extracted from the evilness within themselves, or what agrees with those affairs, of course, with their nafs, with themselves, which is in opposition to the kitab and sunnah. وَالتَّعَلُّقُ مِنْهُمْ بِآيَاتٍ لَمْ يُسْعِدْهُمْ فِيهَا مَا وَافَقَ النُّفُوسِ. He says, of course, being claimed with so-called affairs, that which did not make them happy, which agree with the inward selves or the inward minds or rationalities or the feelings and the desires of themselves. Because they did not satisfy them in that regard, that is the reason why they opposed it. So it had to be what? Something that agreed with their so-called rationality and agrees with their feelings and their desires. And if it didn't agree with that, they rejected what Allah and His Messenger said. This is a Sufi saying this. فَتَأَوَّلُوا عَلَىٰ أَهْوَائِهِمْ وَصَحَّحُوا بِذَلِكَ مَذَاهِبَهُم. So they now started to oppose, falling into opposition in regards to the names and attributes of Allah. Where they started to come with false interpretations and distorted meanings, which was upon or in agreement or according to what their desires. in which they now, of course, authenticated and made so-called correct, which agrees with their madhab. This is a Sufi saying this, which agrees with their madhab, or their so-called madhab, or their so-called beliefs or their methodologies. Now what he says, now this is what he goes on to say. He said, now ihtajtu ila al-kashf, then I now became needed, which became needed for myself, to now show and reveal to the people what was the characteristic of those who came from before, meaning from the Sahaba. Due to all these atrocities that have been newly introduced that affected negatively with the Muslims, or affected the Muslims in an evil way, now I have now taken on this regard or this responsibility to clarify to the people of what those who came first were upon, and what was the so-called ma'khad al-mu'mineen, where the believers had now extracted their proper guidance from. And what was the methodology of those who came first? He says, of course, out of fear that they will now fall into the statements of those who went astray, hatta fi jumlati aqawilihim, until they will fall into the group or the statements of the groups of those who fell into what the Messenger of Allah actually warned his ummah from falling into. وَمَنَعَ الْمُسْتَجِيبِينَ لَهُ حَتَّى حَذَّرَهُمْ. He says, of course, in those وَمَنَعَ الْمُسْتَجِيبِينَ لَهُ, he says, التي حذر رسول الله أمته ومنع المستجيبين له حتى حذرهم. He says, of course, that he prevented those not to answer the call of those he also warned against, not to join their call, not to what? Answer them. Then he goes on to say, ثم ذكر أبو عبد الله خروج النبي وهم يتنازعون في القدر وغضبه وحديث لا ألفين أحدكم متكئا على أريكته. Then he goes on to say in his book, he said, then Muhammad bin Khafif, Abu Abdullah, he said, he started mentioning when the Messenger of Allah went out amongst his companions and they were arguing. They were arguing in the affairs of the Qadr. He said they were arguing in regards to the affairs of the divine decree of Allah, and how the Messenger of Allah became very upset. For example, he's speaking about the hadith which is in Tirmidhi, where the Messenger of Allah says, خرج علينا رسول الله ونحن نتنازع في القدر فغضب حتى احمر وجهه حتى كأنما فقهي في وجنتيه الرمان فقال أبي هذا أمرتم أم بهذا أرسلت إليكم إنما هلك من كان قبلكم حين تنازعوا في هذا الأمر عزمت عليكم ألا تنازعوا فيه. Said that the Messenger of Allah left out, or he came amongst us. He says that we were disputing, or we were what? Arguing about the affairs of the divine decree, until he became extremely upset. He says until his face became red, as if his two cheeks started protruding, as it was like that fruit called a rumman. Which was a rumman? It's like a pomegranate. Like his face became, or his cheeks had become red like those pomegranates. And he said, for verily, this is what you've been commanded with? He says, is this the reason why I've been sent to you? So the Messenger of Allah was what? Reprimanded him. Not to what? Dispute in these matters. Especially matters that were what? Something that would show evil in regards to the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. Especially the affairs of what? Creed. Meaning the belief in the divine decree and what is connected with it. Then as it says in the hadith, verily those who were destroyed from before you, he says, of course, when they started disputing in this affair, he says that I have now obliged upon you not to argue about this matter, or not to dispute about this matter. So that narration is what it's speaking about here, everyone. So Muhammad bin Khafif, in which Shaykh al-Islam continues to mention his statement. So he's saying that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he became upset in regards to affairs that's connected with creed. Which, if one now was to argue and dispute in these matters, as you see the Muslims do these days, from all those matters that's connected with it, from the belief that Allah is above, and how they dispute in that matter, and that Allah's names and attributes that they reject, and how they dispute in that matter. And not only that, you'll find that even from amongst the groups and sects from amongst the Muslims, if you believe Allah is above, you're a kafir. And to the point, yes, absolutely. And your blood is halal, and everything else is halal. Like I told everyone, from the creed and the belief that we study in the books such as Aqidat al-Salaf wa Ashab al-Hadith by the great Imam Abu Uthman Ismail ibn Abdur Rahman al-Sabuni al-Naysaburi rahimahullah. You'll find Abu Abdur Rahman, the name of the book was his title, Aqidat al-Salaf wa Ashab al-Hadith, where he brought the narration upon Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He said, there's no one from amongst those who innovated in the religion of Islam, who deviated in creed, except all of them are inclined towards killing and murder. All of them. All of them are. The only ones who are safe is those who believe in Islam in the correct way with the correct creed and the correct belief. But all of them who have deviated from that matter are all inclined towards violence in the sword. And they will be quick to what? Deem you their blood and your life to be halal. So there's no one that's safe in this regard except those who traverse upon the correct belief and methodology in regards to those verses in the book of Allah and the understanding of it, and also the ahadith of the message of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, if they believe in it. Because you'll find here, even from amongst the Muslims, that also believe that the sunnah is not even that important. It's not that important. It's just, statements. Not realizing that affairs also from fundamentals. You believe the message of Allah, the sunnah of the message of Allah is not important? And you say you're Muslim? Don't you say Muhammad Rasulullah? Do you know what that means? Do you know what that necessitates? And a lot of them don't. Because they weren't educated properly. They weren't taught properly. They weren't cultivated properly. There was amongst some deviant sects amongst the Muslims who did not deem these regards to be important at all until they did not busy their people or their communities with educating themselves in it. Until they deemed this affair to be rejected. And it's not that important. Those are just ahadith. They're not that important. And as a result, like we said, everyone, Allah's anger, His wrath descended upon particular people as a result of rejection of these very important detrimental matters. Because at the end of the day, everyone, a person might say, how's that relative to my prosperity in the grave? Because the angels are going to come and they're going to ask you a question. Who is this man that was sent? The angels are going to ask you that. And they're going to base that affair based upon your belief in the message of Allah and what it necessitated. Which was to obey what He commanded, stay away from what He prohibited, to believe in what He informed, and all those matters that's pertaining to following His sunnah. All is going to affect and determine of your affair, of how it will be in the grave when you're under that dirt in the hereafter, and what the angels are going to investigate and scrutinize and ask you concerning. Of whether or not, what do you say about this man? Who's this man? Muhammad. Who is he? How do you think the affair would be if you rejected his sunnah and say, oh, those not important. Those ahadith are nothing. This is nothing. I'll reject it. It's just narrations. Don't nobody really believe that these days. You understand, everyone? Those matters are very, very what? Extremely dangerous. And he even mentions that. That's subhanAllah. He even mentions this right now. Now listen to this. He said, Muhammad bin Khafif, Abu Abdullah, that the message of Allah came upon and highly becoming upset when they started disputing in the affairs of the divine decree. And how the message of Allah became extremely angry. And the hadith, now this is what I'm speaking about now, about what I just said a moment ago. La ulfiyanna ahadukum muttaki'an ala arikatih. The narration, which is authentic, he says, do not let me find one of you sitting upon or reclining upon in his chair or upon his couch. The narration is speaking about a man that said there will come a man in this time amongst his ummah who said, what is in the book of Allah, we accept it. What's in the message of Allah, reject it. He said, do not let me find that you from amongst those people reclining on his couch. It's saying what came from Allah or what came from the book of Allah, we will take that. But what comes from the sunnah, we reject it. That type of matter you'll find, this is what a Sufi is saying. And what Shaykh Islam is utilizing against their followers or against the people from amongst the Sawaf. So then he goes on to say, let's keep going.
Mention that again?
Muhammad bin Khafif. This is all his statements that Shaykh Islam is citing here. All of his statements. And to this very day, brothers and sisters, Shaykh Islam's books are being made war against. To this very moment. Countries that are taking his books and trying to get rid of them. Did you hear me say anything that we've read, that Shaykh Islam said that was incorrect? Everything holding on with the message of Allah is upon. Returning back to what the message of Allah and the companions were upon. Staying away from disbelief in regards to Allah's names and attributes. Sticking to how they believe in regards to the names and attributes of Allah. Sticking to the athar and authentic. Did he say something? say anything wrong? No. Everything that will be the means for people to be properly guided in this world, this is what people are making war against, and then they wonder why the whole world is falling apart. Is it clear?
No.
Jay, so let's keep going. Also, you'll find that he goes on to say, وَحَدِيث سَتَفْتَرِقُ أُمَّتِي عَلَى 73 فِرْقَةً وَأَنَّ النَّاجِيَةَ مَا كَانَ عَلَيْهِ هُوَ وَأَصْحَابُهُ. Also, Muhammad Khafif, he goes on to say, he said, also the Messenger of Allah said that my ummah will divide. To how many sects, everyone? 73. All of them are in hell except one. And that is what he is upon and who? His companions. So now, he goes on to say, this is the last part. ثم قال فلزم الأمة قاطبة معرفة ما كان عليه الصحابة ولم يكن الوصول إليه إلا من جهة التابعين لهم بإحسان المعروفين بنقل الأخبار ممن لا يقبل المذاهب المحدثة فيتصل ذلك قرنا بعد قرن ممن عرفوا بالعدالة والأمانة المحافظين على الأمة ما لهم وما عليهم من إثبات السنة إلى أن قال فأول ما نبتدئ به ما أوردنا هذه المسألة من أجلها ذكر أسماء الله وصفاته مما ذكر الله في كتابه وما بين رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وبركاته من صفاته في سنته وما وصف به عليه الصلاة والسلام ما وصف به ربنا نفسه. That's what we're going to mention now. مما سنذكر قول القائلين بذلك مما لا يجوز لنا في ذلك أن نرده إلى أحكام عقولنا بطلب الكيفية بذلك ومما قد أمرنا بالاستسلام له. So then he goes on to say all these are very important foundations and principles that he's laying down here that are very, very, very important. That is incumbent upon the Muslims, of course, to cling to, which people these days are becoming laxed in, or they have totally abandoned completely. He said, ثم قال, he said, is binding upon the ummah unanimously, قاطبة, unanimously, the knowledge of what the companions were upon. And that affair can never be achieved, of course, except from the aspect of those who followed them with perfection, of those who is known by narrating the authentic narrations and conveying it. And those narrations, of course, in conveying it, does not accept the newly invented matters or the newly introduced cults or beliefs or ways or madhahib. He's saying newly invented, of course. فَيَتَّصِلُ ذَلِكَ, and that affair will be what? Connected from one generation after the next, meaning it was conveyed by those who were known with great uprightness. Adala. And I talked about the word adala here, means uprightness. Uprightness in creed and being the most greatest of those who are trustworthy and reliable. Those who protected, of course, the ummah. مَا لَهُمْ وَمَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ إِثْبَاتِ السُّنَّةِ. Those who Allah utilized and made them the means of the religion to be protected in order, of course, of what was accepted for the ummah or what was rejected or what was false, from affirming and protecting the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu until what he said to the end of his statement. He said, listen to this. For the first thing, what we start with, of what we're going to now bring in this matter, because of it, meaning, of course, that matter that we just said a moment ago, is mentioning the names and attributes of Allah, in which Allah mentioned in His book, and what the Messenger of Allah clarified of Allah's characteristics in His authentic sunnah. And what the Messenger of Allah, of course, described his Lord with, what Allah described Himself with, and of course the Messenger of Allah sallallahu in which we'll now mention the statement of the Qa'ileen, the statement of those who said that. Or what? It is not permissible for us, of course, at all to now return those affairs back to the matters of our rationality and intellect. Meaning all those affairs that are vital in regards to Allah's name and attributes, all rely upon what, everyone? Revelation. That's the foundation. And we have not been entrusted, nor did Allah entrust us to leave these important matters to our minds, or to our intellects, or to our rationality, at all. by now trying to find out how it is. And we talked about this last class, right, everyone? That these affairs are way beyond our mind's capacity. Way beyond. Certain things Allah created, we cannot even fathom how it is. What about the Creator? Is it clear, everyone? How about Lord the Creator? Those affairs, of course, has been established through pure revelation of what we've been commanded to submit ourselves to and surrender ourselves to. Even amongst creation, amongst things we still can't understand. We see even that the internet is there and that lines are being broadcasted very, very extremely fast. And we can't even see it. But it's being done, isn't it? It's proven. I'm using the internet right now. And there's people that's listening to my lessons from probably all over the world. Do we see the lines and everything? Do we see how fast it's moving? But we know it's there. We know it's being done. Right or wrong? Right. That's in things that's created. How about Allah? You understand, everyone? These are the affairs that's created. So those are matters you'll find that Ahl-Ilm that they mention in this regard, especially in regards to what we just mentioned. So you'll find that this is a Sufi mentioned this. And this is what Shaykh al-Islam is just using, conveying. He's saying, see? He's saying verbatim what we say. Why are you not following it? This is what we're upon. This is our foundation, and this is what every Muslim is supposed to believe. They're not supposed to differ in these matters. Hence, as a result of it, Allah sent His wrath down. And it weakened us. And like we talked about last class, a lot of the deviant sects were actually made from the non-Muslims. And a lot of their ideologies and beliefs were extracted from the non-Muslims until the Muslims adopted it and they fell for the trap. And a lot of the non-Muslims monetarily assisted it so it could go forth, giving them money so it could be widespread, giving them facilities, masajid, places, so they can cultivate deviance. To this day, it's still being done. Because like we said, the non-Muslims realized that the power of the Muslims and the source of it came from them being united in what the message of Allah is upon. They know that if that happens, the Muslims are unstoppable. They know it. That's the reason why they had to pump the affairs of deviant sects from amongst them. From them in the past, all you got to do is look at the history of what happened with Abdullah ibn Saba, who was a Jew who started the Shia. He started it. It's till this day, the Jews live amongst Iran. There's Jews that live there. In Isfahan, the area called Isfahan, they're waiting for the Dajjal. At any rate. So what the affairs are pertaining to Abdullah ibn Saba al-Yahudi. He wanted to stop the power of the Muslims because Islam was spreading too fast and they were becoming too powerful too quickly. And it was scary. The non-Muslims were petrified. Especially when they seen when Rome and Persia went down. When they seen them went down, they became extremely petrified. Y'all took down Rome and y'all took down Persia? Some people for some mud masjid from Medina, that's where it started from? And y'all took them down? They became extremely petrified. You understand, everyone? When they seen that, they had to study. Where are these guys getting their power from? There's no way. This is something that's unprecedented. They took down Rome and Persia. That's just like saying they took down, let's just say, for example, America got taken down, or Russia and China. By some little small area in Philadelphia. From some mud house in Philadelphia. Took down all them countries. What gave them this power? This is crazy. These people are dangerous. So they studied it, looked at it. This is where they're getting their power from. They're united in their creed. The affairs pertaining to the tawheed of Allah, the worship of Allah, the rid of magic, the rid of superstitions, the rid of filth, the rid of worshiping rocks and trees and gods and all the other filth, and leaving all these affairs. Once and then them being united in regards to the names and attributes of Allah. When they found that out, they started to let's come with something to make them deviate in that affair, to make them now divided. Because once you're divided, you're weak. Now we can come in and conquer. And it's the same game being played today. It's not different. To the point where a whole of America wants to keep the people divided in everything. Until the point where they divided the people up even of sex. To the point, I'm talking about being your gender. Now even to the point where even people are confused about their gender. And they start to dispute over that. We're divided by these matters. Everything is all vices to keep everyone what? Hating each other, arguing with each other, bickering with each other. What? Confused. Because when the time is right, they're going to come in and conquer. They're going to come in and they're going to do something to everyone. And the most people who they fear the most is not the Christians. It's not. It's the Muslims. It's the Muslims and them going back to the pure religion of the correct creed. They're afraid of it because they know once the Muslims do that, it's over. But as long as we got them at bay where they're going to be weak for the dunya and they're going to be weak for this world and they're going to talk about how Allah's name and attributes are all not important. Allah is everywhere and we can worship rocks, we can worship trees, and we can speak things into existence and all the other nonsense and filth that they're involved in. They know they're going to keep them weak in that state. And that they know that the Muslims are also weak in regards to sins. They love sinning openly now and they brag about it and they don't care who's going to judge me and all the other nonsense that they do. And as long as they keep doing that, the Muslims are going to stay in the state that they're in and the non-Muslims love it. Yeah, keep doing it. Is it clear, everyone?
No.
Good. We'll stop here. So, and we'll talk about next class, everyone. We'll speak about next class about the affairs pertaining to the nafs, the word nafs, because I know a lot of people were saying, where does the word that of Allah, the characteristics of Allah's essence, come from? And what is the meaning of the word nafs in regards to Allah? We'll talk about that next class. Because that was some of the doubts or ambiguities that was used. Shaykh al-Islam said the names of the attributes breaks them down into two categories, sifatun dhatiyya, sifat fi'liyya. Where did he get that from? That's newly invented. So y'all talking about he's following the Kitab and Sunnah? We'll talk about that next class. No. Where those matters actually came from. And Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah actually extracted those categories and it's from the Book of Allah. We'll talk about that next class. Any questions about the lesson? Fataawa, Abdur Razzaq.
I missed the hadith about Allah gives the worldly benefits to those who love.
Oh, I have to get the verbatim for you. Hadith is in Imam Ahmad's Musnad. The hadith بطوله إن الله قسم بينكم أرزاقكم كما قسم بينكم أخلاقكم وإن الله يعطي الدنيا من يحب ومن لا يحب ومن أعطاه الله الدين فقد أحبه. Well, I'll get the hold on for a second. Just give me 1 second. You gotta leave. I'll see you, inshallah. So you guys got to get leave. Play, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Allah yubarak fikum. May Allah reward you guys. Let's stop here, inshallah. I'll see you guys tomorrow, inshallah. Stop here. Any questions about the class?
Yeah.
What you going to ask? You was going to ask something?
Yeah.
Fadda.
When you was talking about them believing that the blood and the life was halal, were you saying they were cannibals or something?
No, they would say we're non-Muslims. You believe that Allah is above. The Asha'ira to this day believe that. The Asha'ira, the group called the Asha'ira, believe if you believe that Allah is above, then you're a disbeliever. You're kafir. And if you believe, and if you point above, even though you don't believe Allah is above, but you might point, then your finger needs to be chopped off. That's still the belief of the Asha'ira to this day. They still believe that. If you just point, you're fasiq and your finger needs to be chopped off.
But what somebody said was a plane up there.
No. If you're affirming that Allah is above.
Oh, okay.
Well, if you believe that Allah is above, you're kafir to them. If you just merely point, but you don't believe Allah is above, then you're fasiq, and the prescribed penalty for that is that your finger needs to be chopped off. That's what I said. Everyone that opposes the Kitab and Sunnah, all are inclined towards what? Murder, violence, and mayhem, and mass hysteria, and pillage. They are all inclined towards all of them. Is it clear? There's no one that's saved in regards to understanding the Book of Allah, the Sunnah, the Message of Allah, except those who hold to the pure Orthodox Islam and who are upon the way of the Salaf. Other than that, every devious sect is inclined towards violence and bloodshed. Whether they be from the Sufis, I don't care who it is. They are all going to be devious sects that are going to emerge from amongst them who are considered radicals. Radicals, extremists. who are going to be inclined towards murder, bloodshed, violence, mass hysteria, and what? Shedding the blood of innocent people and innocent bystanders. Is it clear?
Yeah.
And that's from every deviant sect. Even from amongst the Jews, and you see that clearly in Gaza,
Yeah.
from the Zionists. But they are sadistic psychopaths. Then you had the Crusaders from amongst the Christians in the Spanish Inquisition. Who killed? About how many people was killed? Millions by Christians who are called the Salibiyin. They used to wear crosses on the armor. Look up the history. It's called the Spanish Inquisition. What happened? They were Christians. They killed Muslims and Jews by the millions. Look it up. Go on Google and look Spanish Inquisition. What happened? And you'll find it will amaze you. Because people think, oh, the Christians are all peaceful people. No. No. Radicalists, extremists. They emerged from amongst them and they killed millions of people. Is it clear? No, tafadhal.
One of the people I talk to, they're Christian, right? And I had saw this this verse that is talking about just killing people. It's like killing a bunch of people that you don't agree with in the Bible.
You talk about Christians?
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're all radicals from every sect, even they be from Muslim or non-Muslims. All of them, they're going to be radical extremists. They're even radical extreme Buddhists.
Really?
Absolutely. They're killing the Muslims in Burma right now. Look it up. And they doing some horrible things to the Muslims. I don't even want you guys to look at some of the images of what they're doing. It will make you upset. What they're doing. Buddhists. You think, the Buddhists are all peaceful? No, they're radical extremists from them too. And don't even look it up because it'll make you cry. Some of the stuff you see of what they do. They do to the Muslims. At any rate, anything else about the lesson? Anyone, anything? طيب, we'll stop here inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.